From the surface, the United States-Mexico border seems fixed and immutable. But in the early 1970s, a quiet but consequential deal reshaped parts of that boundary, not through war, but via a treaty and massive engineering. This is the story of how the U.S. secretly acquired territory from Mexico under the Boundary Treaty of 1970 and why it mattered. On November 23, 1970, the United States and Mexico signed the treaty to resolve pending boundary differences and maintain the Rio Grande and Colorado River as the international boundary. After ratification, the treaty entered into force on April 18, 1972. The International Boundary and Water Commission, a joint U.S.-Mexico body, was charged with translating its provisions into action. At its core, the treaty addressed shifting river channels. The Rio Grande and parts of the Colorado River occasionally changed course, creating bancos parcels of land left stranded as rivers moved. Under earlier agreements like the Banco Convention of 1905, the two nations had already performed hundreds of small land swaps when such cutoffs occurred. But by 1970, unresolved boundary disputes persisted, particularly around Presidio, Texas, Ojinaga, Chihuahua, and Hidalgo, Texas, Reynosa, Tamaulipas. To resolve them, the treaty mandated construction of engineered flood control and river relocation channels. In the Presidio-Ojinaga sector, the U.S. built a new 4.7-mile channel, and elsewhere downstream a 3.6-mile channel to stabilize the river. As a result, approximately 606.19 acres of land shifted from the Mexican side of the Rio Grande to U.S. territory, while about 252 acres moved from U.S. soil into Mexico. Meanwhile, in the Hidalgo-Reynosa area, a 1.6-mile artificial flood control channel transferred 481.68 acres from Mexico to the United States. In exchange, the U.S. ceded 2,177 acres back to Mexico, including parcels near Presidio, the Horcon Tract containing part of Rio Rico, Tamaulipas, and Beaver Island near Roma, Texas. All of these transfers were legal, authorized under U.S. law, in particular 22 U.S. Code Paragraph 27034 gives the Secretary of State via the IBWC authority to acquire or cede land to implement the treaty. Because these changes involved complex river engineering rather than warfare, the land swap was relatively little known to the broader public at the time. Many people outside specialist diplomatic and water management circles did not appreciate that thousands of acres were, in effect, being rebalanced across national lines. First, it secured flood control. By realigning the Rio Grande, both nations reduced the risk of catastrophic flooding in border communities like Presidio and Ojinaga. Second, it clarified legal sovereignty. The treaty established procedures to prevent future loss or gain of territory as the river shifted, minimizing potential diplomatic conflict. Economically, stable channels protected valuable agricultural land and infrastructure, especially in Texas and Tamaulipas, while reducing costly emergency repair work. Politically, the agreement reinforced cooperation. The IBWC, long criticized for environmental neglect and lack of transparency, was given a clear mandate to manage the boundary responsibly. It showed how two countries with a fraught history could pragmatically negotiate detailed technical and mutually beneficial solutions. The implications were more than local. This treaty demonstrated that territorial change in the modern era can happen quietly, under the radar, as a byproduct of engineering and diplomacy. It underlined the power of institutions like the IBWC and the importance of law to institute permanence even when natural forces like rivers are constantly shifting. In conclusion, the 1970 Boundary Treaty was not an act of conquest, but a calculated legal resolution. The United States acquired nearly 2,000 acres of Mexican soil in return for ceding more than 2,100 acres, rebalancing the border through flood control engineering rather than conflict. The key lesson is this: even seemingly stable borders can be fluid, and modern geopolitics increasingly relies on technical cooperation, not force, to resolve territorial issues.